The caregiver sang softly to the old man, unaware his millionaire son was watching and changed her life. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The fluorescent lights in West Hill Nursing Home hummed softly as Maya Bennett walked down the long corridor. The air carried that familiar scent of antiseptic and warm linen. She had been a caregiver here for almost 3 years, but that morning felt different. Her supervisor, Mrs. Carter, had called her into the office with an expression she could not quite read. "Maya," Mrs. Carter said, folding her hands on the desk, "we have a special patient for you. Room 407. His name is Harold Thompson." Maya blinked. "The Harold Thompson? The founder of Thompson Financial?" Mrs. Carter nodded once. "That is correct. He has been in a semi-comatose state for nearly 6 months. His condition is stable but delicate. The family insists on the highest care standard. You will be on rotation alone during the night shift." Maya hesitated for a heartbeat. The name Thompson echoed through every headline in the city: wealth, legacy, and power. Taking care of a man like that felt intimidating, but she remembered why she became a nurse in the first place. Years ago, when her mother lay dying in a crowded hospital, Maya had held her hand through the final hours. She remembered whispering a promise through tears. "No one will ever die alone on my watch." That promise still lived inside her every time she put on her uniform. So, she nodded firmly. "I will do it." By the time she reached the top floor, the hallway was silent except for the rhythmic hum of machines. The private suite was unlike any other patient room she had ever seen. Heavy oak furniture, cream-colored curtains, and framed photographs of a family frozen in time. In the center of it all lay Harold Thompson, a tall man now frail, his once commanding hands resting lifelessly on crisp white sheets. Maya approached quietly, her steps soft on the polished floor. She adjusted the IV drip, checked his vitals, and then did something no machine could. She began to hum. A gentle tune. An old lullaby. Her mother used to sing. The sound filled the sterile room with something human, something alive. For a moment, she thought she saw the faintest movement in his fingers. She froze, heart pounding. Maybe it was her imagination. Still, she smiled softly and whispered, "It is all right, Mr. Thompson. You are safe. I will be here every night." Oh. Outside the room, unseen through the glass window, a man in a dark suit stood watching. His name was Evan Thompson, the old man's only son. And as Maya's voice carried through the quiet corridor, something in him stirred for the first time in a very long while. The fluorescent lights dimmed to night mode inside West Hill Nursing Home, casting a golden hush across the long corridor. Outside, the sky was wrapped in quiet gray, and the city lights shimmered faintly through the tall windows. It was 10 o'clock in the evening when Maya Bennett finished checking on her other patients and walked slowly back toward room 407. The beeping of heart monitors echoed softly down the hall, a rhythm she had learned to find comfort in. Tonight felt heavier. She sensed it from the moment she arrived for her night shift. 2 nurses in the break room had exchanged quick glances when they saw her name listed on the chart. One of them, Clara, leaned closer and whispered, "You are really taking the Thompson case? No one lasts longer than 2 weeks in that room." Maya frowned. "Why not?" Clara shrugged. "Because his son is impossible to please. You will see. He comes by at random hours, asks 1,000 questions, and looks at you like he can see right through your soul." The last girl cried after her first week. Maya had simply smiled, brushed it off, and gone to work. But now, as she stood outside the private suite, she could not ignore the slight tremor in her hand when she reached for the doorknob. Inside, the room glowed with the faint light of a single lamp. The soft hum of the oxygen machine filled the silence. Harold Thompson lay motionless, his breathing steady but shallow. His skin looked pale against the dark wood of the headboard, his hair thin and silver, his once powerful frame now fragile beneath the blanket. Maya adjusted the temperature setting, checked the IV line, and smoothed the folds of the blanket. Her movements were precise and practiced, but her heart stayed tender. She spoke quietly as she worked, as though her words might find their way through the veil of Harold's sleep. "Good evening, Mr. Thompson." The rain stopped outside. "You would like that, I think." The garden looked peaceful when I came in. Her voice was calm and low, each word shaped by kindness rather than duty. When she was done with the medical tasks, she did what no rulebook required. She drew a chair closer to the bed, folded her hands in her lap, and began to hum. The lullaby was the same as the night before, soft and slow. A song her mother used to sing when the world felt too heavy. The tune floated in the sterile air, rising and falling with the rhythm of Harold's breathing. Outside the glass panel near the nurse's station, a shadow paused. Evan Thompson, the old man's only son, had come again. He did not announce his arrival, nor did he knock. He stood quietly, watching. He had not expected to find anyone in the room this late, much less a caregiver singing to a man who might never open his eyes again. Maya did not know he was there. She only saw the steady rise and fall of the blanket and heard the slow beep of the monitor. As she sang the last line of the lullaby, the monitor's tone shifted slightly, just a higher note, a quicker beat. She turned her head sharply, heart thudding. "Mr. Thompson?" she whispered, moving closer. His fingers twitched barely, but enough for her to notice. "Can you hear me?" There was no reply. The beeping steadied again, rhythmic and unchanged. Maya exhaled and smiled faintly to herself. "I guess I imagined that," she murmured, and resumed adjusting the blanket. Evan remained behind the glass, unmoving. The gentle tone of her voice carried through the thin barrier, soft and real. He found himself remembering the sound of his mother humming that same lullaby when he was a boy. He had forgotten the melody until now. A memory flickered in his mind, his father coming home late, his mother waiting with that same song in her voice, her hand resting on his small shoulder. She had passed away when he was still young, and Harold had buried himself in work ever since. Evan had done the same. Until tonight, he had not realized how much silence ruled their lives. Inside the room, Maya began to clean the bedside table, careful not to disturb the machines. She replaced the wilted flowers with a small sprig of lavender from her own garden. The scent filled the room gently. "I brought this from home," she said softly. "They say lavender helps people rest better. Maybe you can smell it, even if you cannot open your eyes." She sat for a moment, studying his face, the lines of age, the faint scar near his temple, the small twitch in his jaw that came with every breath. "You must have seen so much in your life," she whispered. "Built so much. But now you are here, and all I can give you is a song. Maybe that is enough." The heart monitor kept its calm rhythm. She took it as a yes. When her shift ended near dawn, she gathered her things quietly and looked once more at the sleeping figure. "Good night, Mr. Thompson. See you tomorrow." As the door closed behind her, Evan stepped forward and entered the room for the first time in months. The lavender scent lingered in the air, and his father's breathing sounded steadier than usual. He placed a hand on the old man's arm and whispered, "You have got someone who cares now, Dad. Maybe that is what you needed all along." The sun began to rise over the city, washing the hospital windows with pale gold. Maya was already outside, walking to the bus stop, unaware that her small act of compassion had been witnessed, and that it had quietly changed the course of 3 lives forever. The morning light slipped through the blinds of Maya Bennett's small apartment, painting thin golden stripes across her kitchen table. A steaming cup of coffee sat untouched beside her notebook, its pages filled with hurried notes about patient care schedules and medication reminders. But her eyes were fixed on a single line written at the bottom of the page. "He moved." She had written it just before dawn, right after leaving West Hill Nursing Home. It was barely a twitch, just the faintest movement of Harold Thompson's fingers, yet it had felt like something sacred. Maya wanted to believe it was real, not just a trick of the light or her exhausted imagination. When she arrived back at the nursing home later that afternoon, she carried the same quiet hope in her chest. She walked through the glass doors, nodded politely at the receptionist, and changed into her pale blue uniform. But before she could head to room 407, she was stopped by Nurse Clara. "You are smiling," Clara said, folding her arms. "That is rare after a night in Thompson's suite." Maya gave a soft laugh. "Maybe I am just hopeful. I think he is getting better." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Careful with that kind of hope. That family has money, power, and lawyers. If anything goes wrong, it is never their fault. Maya thanked her for the warning and went on. She knew Clara meant well, but something inside her refused to treat this job as just a shift on the schedule. It mattered. Every small kindness mattered. When Maya entered the private suite, the scent of lavender still lingered from the sprig she had left on the bedside table. The afternoon light made the room feel less like a hospital and more like a sanctuary. Harold Thompson lay in the same position, but his breathing seemed a little deeper, his skin less ashen. She checked the monitor readings, then the IV line, all within normal range. "Good afternoon, Mr. Thompson," she said softly, placing a gentle hand on the edge of his blanket. "It is a beautiful day outside. The roses in the courtyard have started to bloom." Her voice, calm and rhythmic, filled the quiet air. She began speaking as she worked, sharing bits of her life like she had done for the past 2 nights. "I used to help my mom in the garden when I was little. She loved lavender and white roses. Said they reminded her of peace. Maybe that is why I brought you some." The monitor's beeping remained steady, like a soft metronome, guiding her through the routine. She hummed a few bars of the lullaby, the same melody that had drawn the attention of Evan Thompson 2 nights earlier. She did not know that Evan was again standing just outside the room, unseen, listening. He had come back earlier than usual, unable to stop thinking about what he had witnessed before. He told himself he came to check on his father's progress, but deep down he knew it was more than that. Something about Maya's presence had altered the stillness in that room, the same stillness that had haunted him since his mother's death. Maya adjusted the pillow behind Harold's head, careful not to disturb any tubes. As she leaned closer, she noticed a framed photograph on the nightstand, a younger Harold with his wife and son. They were standing on a sailboat, laughing, sunburned, alive. Maya smiled faintly. "You had a beautiful family, Mr. Thompson," she whispered. "I think your son still visits often. I saw him once in the hallway, though he did not see me. He loves you, even if he does not say it out loud." The monitor beeped a little faster. Maya's eyes flickered toward it. "Do you hear me? Maybe you do. Maybe you just needed someone to keep talking." Evan heard her words from outside and felt a quiet sting in his chest. Love. It was not something he was used to hearing spoken so simply. His relationship with his father had long been strained by expectation and distance. He had always believed Harold cared more about his company than his family. But seeing this woman talk to his father with such gentleness made him wonder if he had misunderstood something all along. Maya continued her routine, changing the sheets, wiping the bedside table, adjusting the curtain to let in a beam of sunlight. "There," she said softly. "Now it feels like a little bit of morning in here." When she finished, she pulled up the chair beside the bed and sat down for her usual moment of quiet. She closed her eyes and began humming again. The melody was soft but sure, rising with each breath, and then it happened. A faint sound broke through the lullaby, a whisper, almost too soft to hear. Maya froze. The sound came from the bed. She leaned forward, heart racing. "Mr. Thompson? Did you try to say something?" His lips moved again, barely parting. No clear words, only a breath, but it was unmistakable. The monitor showed a sudden spike in heart rate. Maya's eyes filled with tears. "You are fighting your way back, aren't you?" She pressed the call button for Dr. Harris and kept talking softly, afraid that silence might close the fragile door that had just opened. "You are doing so well, Mr. Thompson. Keep listening. Keep coming back." Outside, Evan stepped closer to the glass, astonished. He could see the faint movement in his father's hand, the way Maya held her composure through her tears. It was the most life he had seen in that room in half a year. When the doctor arrived moments later, Maya stepped back to give him space, her heart still pounding. The doctor checked the monitors, then turned to her with raised brows. "You said he moved?" "Yes," Maya replied. "He tried to speak." Dr. Harris looked at the readings again. "His brain activity is improving. Whatever you are doing, Miss Bennett, keep doing it." Maya smiled faintly, relief washing over her. "All I did was sing." The doctor nodded thoughtfully. Then maybe that is what he needed. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Evan lingered in the hallway long after everyone else had left. Through the half-open door, he could still hear Maya humming that same tune. For the first time in months, He believed his father might actually come back, not because of machines or medicine, but because one woman refused to give up on a man everyone else had already forgotten. The next morning at West Hill Nursing Home began like any other, quiet, sterile, and softened by the hum of machines. Yet something unseen lingered in the air. The nurses whispered about it in the hallways, glancing toward room 407 as though it now held a secret. Word had spread quickly. The man who had not moved in half a year had shown signs of life. Maya Bennett stood by the window of the staff lounge, her hands wrapped around a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. She had not slept much after her shift. The memory of Harold Thompson's lips moving, that faint whisper, still replayed in her mind like a dream she was afraid to lose. Clara entered the lounge with her usual skeptical smirk. "So, the miracle nurse returns. You sure you did not imagine it?" Maya smiled tiredly. "I did not imagine it, Clara." He tried to speak. Dr. Harris confirmed increased brain activity. Clara shrugged. "Well, let us hope the family believes you. The Thompsons are not exactly the trusting type." That comment echoed in Maya's head as she made her way down the corridor. She passed a few curious nurses who offered polite smiles but lowered their voices as soon as she passed. When she reached room 407, she paused at the door and took a deep breath before stepping inside. The room looked almost the same as it had yesterday, the pale light streaming through the window, the lavender scent lingering in the air, but the energy was different. There was a faint warmth that had not been there before, as if life had gently begun to return. Maya moved through her usual routine, checking the IV line, cleaning the bedside tray, adjusting the pillow. When she finished, she spoke softly. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson. It is Thursday. The sun is out, and it looks like the roses survived the rain." The monitor responded with a slow, steady rhythm. She smiled faintly. A knock on the door startled her. When she turned, she saw Evan Thompson standing there, dressed in a charcoal suit, his tie slightly loosened. He looked tired but alert, the faintest hint of something softer in his expression than the cold professionalism she had seen in his photographs. "Good morning," he said. His tone was polite, but measured. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," Maya replied. "Your father's vitals have been stable since last night." He nodded, stepping closer to the bed. "I heard what happened. Dr. Harris called me early this morning. He said my father tried to speak." "Yes," Maya said quietly. "It was faint, but it was real. I think he is trying to come back to us." Evan looked down at his father, his jaw tightening. I almost forgot what his voice sounded like. For a moment, the two stood in silence, the only sound the soft beeping of the heart monitor. Then Maya said gently, "Sometimes the body remembers kindness before it remembers words. He is responding to that." Evan turned to her, curious. "You really believe that?" "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "I do." "Well." He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable, before nodding once. "Then keep doing whatever it is you are doing. If it helps him, I will make sure you have everything you need." Maya thanked him and returned to her duties. But as Evan lingered near the door, she could feel the weight of his gaze. It was not intrusive, more like a quiet curiosity. When he finally left, she exhaled softly and resumed humming, her voice threading through the quiet room, like sunlight slipping through curtains. Hours later, during her break, Maya sat in the small garden behind the nursing home. The world outside the hospital walls always felt sharper, the wind cooler, the scent of grass stronger, the colors more alive. She closed her eyes and thought about her mother. It had been 8 years since she passed. The hospital where her mother died had been nothing like West Hill. It had been crowded, noisy, underfunded. Maya had sat beside the bed as her mother's breathing slowed, whispering songs to fill the silence. That was the night she had decided to become a nurse, not because of medicine, but because of humanity. She opened her eyes again and whispered into the breeze, "You would have told me to keep singing, Mom." Oh. When Maya returned to room 407 that evening, she was surprised to see fresh flowers in a glass vase on the table, white roses. A small card rested beside them. In neat handwriting it said, "Thank you for not giving up, E.T." She smiled and placed the vase closer to the bed. "Your son brought you flowers, Mr. Thompson. They are beautiful, do you see?" The monitor beeped softly, steady as always. She took her seat by the bed and began to hum again, letting the day fade into night. Outside the room, Evan stood watching from the hallway once more. He had not meant to stay, but the sound of her voice had stopped him in his tracks. The melody carried through the glass, calm and unforced, filling the sterile air with something warm and deeply human. For the first time in years, he did not feel the urge to rush back to the office or answer another email. He simply listened. Later, when Maya ended her shift, she noticed him still there. Their eyes met briefly through the half-open door. He gave her a small, genuine nod, one that said more than words could. She nodded back, then whispered to the sleeping old man, "Your son stayed the whole time. Maybe that is the song he needed too." As she turned off the lamp and stepped out into the dim hallway, the lullaby seemed to linger behind her, a thread of warmth connecting three lonely hearts, one sleeping, one watching, and one singing softly against the silence. Night had fallen over West Hill Nursing Home again, calm and slow, with the faint drizzle tapping softly against the long glass windows. The corridors smelled faintly of disinfectant and lavender, and the world outside seemed far away. Maya Bennett adjusted the strap of her name badge as she stepped out of the elevator for another night shift. She carried her small notebook, her thermos of tea, and that steady sense of purpose that never seemed to leave her. Room 407 was quiet, but not lifeless. The faint glow of the lamp beside the bed cast a warm circle over Harold Thompson's still face. The heart monitor blinked with calm rhythm, the sound like a pulse of reassurance. Maya set her bag down, straightened the blanket, and smiled softly. "Good evening, Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice gentle as ever. "It is just you and me again tonight." She had barely begun checking his vitals when the door behind her opened. She turned, expecting another nurse, but froze when she saw him, Evan Thompson. He was not in a suit this time. Instead, he wore a simple navy sweater and jeans. His hair looked slightly disheveled, as if he had not gone home after work. "Maya," he said quietly. "May I come in?" "Of course," she replied, stepping aside. "Your father is doing well tonight. His heart rate has been stable all day." Evan nodded but did not look at the monitors. He looked at his father instead, his eyes full of something heavier guilt, maybe. "I do not think I have ever seen him look this peaceful," he said. "He must feel safe," Maya answered. "People can sense care, even when they cannot respond." He glanced at her. "You really believe that?" "Yes," she said simply. "When I was a child, my mother used to say that love does not need to be heard to be felt. I think your father feels that." Evan sat down in the chair on the other side of the bed. It was the first time he had sat there. For a while, they were silent together, listening to the rhythmic beeping of the machines. After a few minutes, Evan spoke again. "I did not used to visit often," he admitted. "Work always came first. I told myself he would not notice, that he would understand. But when I found him that day collapsed in his office, I realized how wrong I had been." Maya listened quietly. His voice had softened in a way she had not heard before. "You cannot change what happened," she said gently. "But you can decide what happens next. He is still here, and that means you still have time." Evan looked at her, almost startled by the simplicity of her words. Then, without another word, he turned toward his father and reached for the old man's hand. It was the first time in years he had done that. Harold's fingers were cool, the skin paper-thin. But when Evan's hand closed around his, the monitor's rhythm changed ever so slightly. A softer tone, a steadier beat. Maya saw it immediately. "Do you see that?" she whispered. "He knows you are here." Evan stared at the screen, his throat tight. "Dad," he said, his voice breaking for the first time in years. "It is me. I am here." Maya stepped back quietly, giving them space. For a few long seconds, she watched the man who had built an empire turn into a son again, vulnerable, human, real. The sight filled the room with a fragile kind of grace. After a while, Evan stood, composed himself, and turned toward her. "You were right," he said softly. "Sometimes kindness does reach where words cannot." Maya smiled. "That is why I keep singing." He looked curious. "You really sing to him every night?" "Yes," she said. "It started by accident. Now it feels like part of his care." Evan hesitated, then asked, "Would you mind if I stayed and listened tonight?" Maya nodded. "Not at all." She pulled the chair closer, the same one she always used. The room dimmed as she turned off the brighter lights, leaving only the soft glow by the bed. Then she began to hum the same gentle lullaby that had become the heartbeat of room 407. Her voice was quiet but steady, filling the sterile air with warmth. Evan sat perfectly still, his gaze shifting between his father and the woman singing beside him. For the first time, the song did not just belong to Harold. It belonged to both of them, to the silence, the regret, and the hope that maybe things could still heal. When the song ended, Maya looked up shyly. He always seems calmer afterward. Evan nodded slowly. So do I. There was a long pause before he said, You remind me of my mother. She used to sing that same song when I was little. I had forgotten it until now. Maya's eyes softened. Then maybe it found its way back for a reason. He gave a small, genuine smile, the first she had ever seen from him. Maybe so. They sat in quiet companionship for a while, two strangers bound by a man who could not speak but who somehow connected them anyway. The room felt less like a ward and more like a living memory. As the clock neared midnight, Maya rose to finish her routine. It is time for his medication, she said softly. Evan stood too. Thank you, Maya, for tonight, for everything. You do not need to thank me, she replied. Your father has done more for me than he knows. Oh? He looked at her, puzzled, but she did not explain. She just smiled and turned back to the bed, humming once more under her breath. When Evan finally left, the hallway lights flickered as he passed, the night quiet except for the faint echo of her song. It followed him all the way to the elevator, and though he could not have explained why, he realized that for the first time in years, he did not feel entirely alone. The next few weeks at West Hill Nursing Home unfolded quietly, like pages turning in a story that only a few people knew was being written. Every evening, when the sun dipped behind the tall glass windows and the halls grew silent, Maya Bennett would take her seat beside Harold Thompson's bed. Her voice, soft and steady, had become part of the room's rhythm woven between the heartbeat monitor, the steady hum of the oxygen machine, and the faint rustle of curtains in the night breeze. Each day, she followed the same routine: check the vitals, adjust the IV line, record the data, then hum the old lullaby that seemed to calm both patient and caregiver. But something had changed since the night Evan Thompson stayed to listen. The air felt different now, less like duty, more like connection. Sometimes, Evan arrived quietly, standing near the window with his hands in his pockets, his eyes distant. Other nights, he brought coffee for both of them, setting the cup beside her chair without a word. The silence between them was never awkward. It was steady, like the quiet understanding that kindness did not need to be explained. One evening, after finishing her rounds, Maya entered room 407 to find Evan already there, reading from a worn leather notebook. His father's name was embossed on the cover. I found this in his office, Evan said without looking up. He used to write down things he never said aloud. Thoughts, regrets, plans. Maya approached softly. Would you like to read something from it? Evan hesitated, then nodded. His voice carried the weight of both memory and distance. He wrote, I built towers, but forgot how to build bridges. The company stands strong, but the home feels empty. Maya's chest tightened. He missed you, she said gently. Evan closed the notebook. Maybe, but I was too proud to see it. She watched him for a moment, then said quietly, You are here now. That matters more than you think. He looked at her then, and there was something unspoken in his eyes, gratitude mixed with confusion, as if he could not understand why her words always seemed to ease something inside him. That night, as Maya hummed the familiar tune, Evan stayed seated. His gaze moved between her and his father, the sound of the lullaby carrying him somewhere far back in time. He remembered being 8 years old, sitting at the piano while his mother sang that same song. His father had stood by the doorway, pretending not to listen. Back then, life had been simple, full of music and sunlight. And then came the business trips, the missed birthdays, the long silences. He had buried those memories under ambition, but Maya's voice brought them back like a tide. When the song ended, Maya looked up. Do you ever play music? I used to, he admitted. I have not touched a piano in years. You should, she said. Music heals in ways medicine cannot. He smiled faintly. You sound like you believe that. I do, she replied. I have seen people respond to sound when they cannot respond to words. It reaches something deeper. For a moment, Evan said nothing. Then, without thinking, he asked, "Do you sing only for him, or do you sing for yourself too?" Her eyes softened. "I sing because it keeps me hopeful, and hope, I think, is contagious." The next evening, Evan surprised her. He arrived early, carrying a small portable speaker. "I brought something," he said. "My mother used to love this song. Maybe my father will remember it too." He played a quiet, instrumental version of the same lullaby. The melody filled the room, gentle and nostalgic. Maya smiled as she listened. "Would you sing along?" he asked softly. She hesitated, then nodded. Her voice rose over the notes, delicate yet sure, filling every corner of the room. For the first time, Evan joined in, his voice untrained but warm. Together, they sang to the man who had once built an empire and now lay still, caught between two worlds. Halfway through the song, a faint movement caught Maya's eye. Harold's fingers twitched again, stronger this time. The monitor beeped faster for a brief second. She gasped softly and leaned forward. "Mr. Thompson, can you hear us?" she whispered. His eyelids fluttered slightly before closing again. The moment passed, but it was enough to send a shiver through both of them. Evan looked at her, disbelief and hope mixing on his face. "That was real." "Yes," she said, her voice trembling. "He is coming back to us." They stayed longer that night, talking in quiet tones about small things, the garden outside, the sound of rain, the way hospitals seemed to hold both life and loss at once. Evan learned that Maya worked double shifts to afford nursing school, and that she had no family left in the city. She learned that he had been running the company since his father's illness, carrying responsibilities that never seemed to end. When the clock struck midnight, she stood to leave. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked lightly. Evan nodded. "I would not miss it." Oh, the next morning, as sunlight streamed into room 407, Nurse Clara found the two coffee cups still sitting side by side on the nightstand. She raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Inside the cup on the left, there was a folded piece of paper, a small note in Evan's handwriting. It read, "Every kindness counts." Maya found it when she arrived for her next shift. She smiled, tucked it into her pocket, and turned toward Harold Thompson with renewed purpose. "Looks like your son believes it too now," she whispered. "You are both healing, in your own ways." Then she began to sing again, her voice rising softly through the morning light, carrying with it the hope that had started to bind three lonely souls into something whole again. The following Monday began quietly at West Hill Nursing Home, though a strange sort of buzz floated through the corridors. Some said it was a miracle, others whispered that it was luck, but everyone agreed that something unusual was happening in room 407. Harold Thompson, the man who had not moved or spoken in half a year, was slowly showing signs of awareness. Maya Bennett arrived early that morning, her uniform freshly pressed, her notebook tucked under her arm. She felt lighthearted, hopeful. Each day seemed to bring a little more life back into that quiet room, and the steady rhythm of the heart monitor had become music she never grew tired of hearing. But when she reached the nurse's station, she noticed Nurse Clara leaning close to Mrs. Carter, the head nurse, their voices low but urgent. The moment they saw her, they stopped talking. Clara straightened and forced a thin smile. "Good morning, Maya," she said in a tone that felt too sweet to be genuine. "Big day, huh? I heard someone special might drop by." Maya frowned slightly. "Someone special?" Mrs. Carter adjusted her glasses and cleared her throat. "Maya, the Thompson family is under a lot of public attention. Their name is tied to the hospital's funding. If anyone asks you questions about his progress or your methods, I expect you to answer professionally and carefully." Maya nodded, though confusion flickered in her eyes. "Of course, ma'am." "Oh." As she walked toward room 407, her steps slowed. Through the half-open door, she saw a tall man standing near the window, someone she had not seen before. He was middle-aged, with sharp eyes and an expensive gray suit. He was speaking quietly to Evan Thompson, who stood stiffly beside him. When they noticed her, the stranger turned. "You must be Miss Bennett," he said, his voice smooth but cool. "I am Dr. Mason, a consultant for the Thompson family." Good morning, doctor," she said politely. "I understand you have been personally caring for Mr. Thompson these past weeks," he continued. "Your methods are, Unconventional. Maya blinked, unsure how to respond. I simply follow standard procedure, sir. I monitor his vitals, ensure his comfort, and provide stimulation therapy. Stimulation therapy? Dr. Mason repeated with a raised brow. You mean singing to him? Evan stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. It has been helping, Dr. Mason. We have all seen the changes. Even my father's brain scans show improvement. The consultant gave a faint, dismissive smile. Correlation does not prove causation, Mr. Thompson. We are running a medical facility, not a concert hall. Maya's cheeks warmed, but she kept her voice steady. With respect, sir, compassion is part of care. The human mind can respond to sound when nothing else reaches it. Dr. Mason turned away, waving a hand. Let us hope sentiment does not interfere with science. When he left, the room seemed to exhale. Evan gave Maya an apologetic look. He means well, he said quietly. He is my Uncle Nathan's advisor. He oversees part of the company's medical board. Maya nodded, though the name made her pause. Nathan Cole? The one who has been managing the foundation since your father's illness? Yes, Evan said, his jaw tightening slightly. He insists on being involved in every decision. Sometimes too involved. Maya glanced at Harold's still form and lowered her voice. Your father moved again yesterday. His fingers twitched when I played music. Evan's expression softened. That is the first real progress we have seen in months. As the afternoon passed, they resumed their quiet routine. Maya replaced the flowers on the nightstand, checked the machines, then began humming softly. Evan stayed to watch, though his thoughts seemed elsewhere. When her shift ended, Maya left her notebook on the nurse's desk before heading home. She did not notice the small shadow that lingered nearby Nurse Clara, flipping through paperwork with feigned disinterest. As soon as Maya disappeared around the corner, Clara glanced at the notebook, hesitated, then slipped it halfway open. Inside were pages of handwritten notes about Harold's reactions. Heart rate spikes, eye movement, finger twitches, the times when music played. She took a quick photo of one page with her phone, then closed the notebook just as Mrs. Carter walked in. Everything all right, Clara? Clara smiled. Yes, ma'am. Just tidying up. That night, while Maya sat in her small apartment eating soup by the window, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It read, Careful with what you are doing at West Hill. Some people do not like attention drawn to that room. Her stomach tightened. She reread the message, unsure if it was a joke or a threat. She decided not to reply, deleted it, and tried to shake off the unease. The next morning, when she returned to work, Evan was already in the hallway waiting for her. His expression was tense. Maya, he said, lowering his voice, did anyone from the board talk to you yesterday? No, she replied. Why? He hesitated before speaking. Someone leaked my father's medical notes. The report about his recovery is circulating internally, and some people are calling it manipulation. They say we are trying to create a publicity stunt. Maya's eyes widened. That is ridiculous. I know, he said. But the hospital board is under pressure. They are sending a review team tomorrow. I wanted to warn you before they question you. She took a breath, steadying herself. I have nothing to hide, Evan. I only did my job. He nodded, a look of quiet respect crossing his face. I believe you. Just be careful. Some of them do not want my father waking up. It would complicate their plans. Maya's pulse quickened. You think someone is trying to stop his recovery? He did not answer directly. Let us just say money makes people do strange things. That night, when Maya sang beside Harold's bed, she noticed something different in the way his hand rested on the blanket, slightly curled, like a man holding on. The monitor beeped steady, reassuring, alive. She leaned closer and whispered, Do not give up, Mr. Thompson. Whatever they are planning, we will keep fighting for you. Outside the glass window, Evan stood watching once more, his jaw set. He knew now that Maya was not just a nurse, she was the only person keeping his father's humanity alive. And somewhere down the hall, hidden in the dim light of the staff room, Clara pressed send on an email addressed to n.cole@thompsongroup.com. The subject line read simply, You were right. She is getting too close. The morning began with heavy clouds rolling over the city, tinting the windows of West Hill Nursing Home in shades of gray. The rain had not yet started, but the air felt thick with the kind of tension that precedes a storm. Inside, the staff moved with quiet purpose. The rumor about the investigation had spread. Every nurse, every orderly, every doctor seemed to walk a little faster, speak a little softer. Maya Bennett arrived early, her hair pulled back neatly, her uniform perfectly pressed. She carried her notebook as always, but her heart was heavier than usual. The message from the night before still echoed in her mind. Careful with what you are doing at West Hill. She had tried to convince herself it was nothing, but deep down, she knew it was a warning. When she stepped into room 407, she was greeted by the familiar rhythm of the heart monitor, steady and calm. Harold Thompson lay as he always did, silent, peaceful, yet somehow more present each day. She adjusted the blinds, letting in what little daylight there was, and began her usual checks. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," she said softly. "It looks like the sky is trying to rain but cannot quite decide. Maybe it is waiting for your approval." Her voice was light, but her eyes were cautious. She could not shake the feeling that someone was watching. At 10 o'clock, a group of 3 people entered the room. 2 men in suits and 1 woman in a navy skirt and blazer. Their badges read, Thompson Group Medical Review Board. Maya straightened immediately. "Miss Bennett?" the woman asked crisply. "I am Dr. Elaine Parker. We are here to conduct an internal review regarding the care of Mr. Harold Thompson." Maya nodded. "Of course, Dr. Parker. What would you like to know?" The woman's tone was firm, professional. "We have been informed that you have been engaging in non-medical interaction with the patient singing, storytelling, and unapproved auditory therapy. Is that correct?" Maya hesitated for half a second before answering. "Yes, that is correct. It is part of emotional stimulation. Research supports—" Dr. Parker raised a hand. "We are not here to discuss theory, Miss Bennett. We are here to determine if these actions have interfered with medical protocol." "Lou." The 2 men behind her took notes silently. Before Maya could respond, the door opened again. Evan Thompson entered, his presence immediately changing the air in the room. "If there is a review, I would like to be part of it," he said. Dr. Parker turned to him. "Mr. Thompson, with respect, this is a procedural investigation." Evan's voice remained calm but unyielding. "And with respect, Doctor, this is my father. I have every right to be present." There was a brief pause. Then Dr. Parker nodded stiffly. "Very well." Maya stood by the bed, feeling both grateful and nervous. Evan gave her a reassuring glance before turning to the panel. "You want proof of improvement?" he said. "Look at the patient's last 3 EEG scans. His brain activity has increased by 15% since Miss Bennett began caring for him." One of the men spoke up. "Increased activity does not necessarily mean cognitive awareness," Evan countered. "And yet every doctor before her gave up. She is the only one who treated him like a human being, instead of a case file. That matters." Dr. Parker's gaze shifted to Maya. "Miss Bennett, would you describe exactly what you do during your shifts?" Maya took a steady breath. "I talk to him. I tell him about the weather, about the flowers in the garden, about life outside these walls. I sing the same lullaby every night, the one his wife used to sing. And each time, his vital signs respond. His heart rate steadies, his breathing evens. That is not interference. That is connection." The room fell silent except for the beeping monitor. The sound filled the space between science and faith. Finally, Dr. Parker spoke again, her tone slightly softer. "We will take your statement into consideration. Thank you, Miss Bennett." The review team left shortly after, their footsteps echoing down the hall. When the door closed, Evan let out a quiet breath. "You handled that perfectly," he said. Maya smiled faintly, though her hands still trembled. "I just told the truth." He looked at her for a long moment. "You know they are not done, right? My Uncle Nathan has a lot of influence. If he wants to make trouble, he will." "I'm not afraid of the truth," she said. "If your father is waking up, nothing can stop that." Evan's expression softened, admiration flickering behind his eyes. "You really believe in him." "I believe in what people become when they are cared for," she replied simply. That evening, after most of the staff had gone home, Maya returned to room 407. The rain had finally come, pattering gently against the windows. She dimmed the lights and sat beside the bed. "Looks like we survived another storm, Mr. Thompson," she whispered. "Maybe tomorrow will be brighter." She began to hum again, her voice blending with the sound of rain. As she sang, the heart monitor changed. One steady beep skipped, then steadied again. She leaned closer, watching carefully. Harold's lips moved, faint but real, forming a sound that could almost be a word. Her breath caught. "Mr. Thompson? Can you hear me?" The sound came again, barely audible but unmistakable, a whisper of breath shaped into a single word. "Evan." Maya's eyes filled with tears. She pressed the call button, voice trembling. "Dr. Harris, you need to come. He just spoke." Lowen. Evan arrived before the doctors did. When he entered, Maya turned toward him, her eyes wide with joy. "He said your name." Evan froze, disbelief and hope colliding inside him. He moved to the bedside, his voice breaking. "Dad, it is me. I am here." Harold's eyelids fluttered, his head tilting ever so slightly toward his son's voice. The room seemed to hold its breath. The doctors rushed in moments later, surrounding the bed with instruments and urgency. But for Maya and Evan, time had already stopped. In that single whispered word, a wall of silence 6 months thick had finally cracked, and everything began to change. The days that followed were unlike anything West Hill Nursing Home had seen in months. Word of Harold Thompson's faint whisper had spread through the corridors like a quiet spark that refused to fade. The nurses spoke of it with a kind of reverent disbelief, while the doctors moved quickly, doubling their rounds and reviewing every chart. For the first time in half a year, there was hope in room 407. Maya Bennett arrived early that morning, her heart pounding with cautious joy. The night before, she had barely slept, replaying the moment in her mind again and again, the faint sound of Harold's voice, forming his son's name. It had been weak, almost lost under the hum of machines. But it was real. And it meant everything. As she stepped into the room, she found Evan Thompson already there, sitting by the bedside. His hands were clasped together, elbows resting on his knees, eyes fixed on his father. He looked exhausted but awake in a new way, as though he had rediscovered a part of himself that had been asleep for years. "Good morning," Maya said softly, setting her bag on the table. Evan looked up and smiled faintly. "He moved again," he said. "Just a little, but I saw it." His eyes opened for a second. Maya's breath caught. She hurried to the bedside and leaned close to check Harold's vitals. His pulse was strong, steady, but his eyelids fluttered like a man standing at the edge of consciousness. "Mr. Thompson," she whispered gently. "It is Maya. Can you hear me?" For a moment there was no response. Then his lips parted, dry and trembling. A small sound escaped, a groan, soft but human. Evan gripped his father's hand, voice breaking. "Dad, it is me. It is Evan." Harold's head shifted slightly toward the sound. His fingers twitched, and a breath of effort passed through his throat. "Evan," he whispered again, clearer this time. The heart monitor picked up its pace. Maya blinked back tears, pressing the intercom. "Dr. Harris, it is happening again. You should come immediately." Within minutes, the medical team arrived. Dr. Harris examined Harold with quick, practiced motions. When he looked up, his voice was steady but tinged with awe. "He is regaining partial consciousness. His responses are weak, but they are purposeful." Evan exhaled shakily. "What does that mean?" "It means," the doctor said, "that he is coming back." Maya stood quietly to the side, her heart swelling with relief. The staff began adjusting machines, calling in therapists, arranging tests. The room buzzed with cautious celebration. But through all the movement and noise, Maya's eyes remained on Harold. His gaze, unfocused but alive, shifted faintly in her direction, and she could have sworn he smiled. Later that day, when the doctors left, Evan and Maya stayed behind. The air felt lighter. Even the machines seemed to hum in softer tones. Evan turned to her, his voice low and full of emotion. "If it were not for you, none of this would have happened. The doctors had given up. I had given up." Maya shook her head gently. "You never truly gave up. You kept coming back. He must have felt that." Evan smiled faintly, his eyes glistening. "I came back because of you." Maya froze, unsure how to respond. His tone was not romantic. It was deeper, quieter. the kind of gratitude that carried too much weight to put into words. She looked down, speaking softly. Sometimes faith is contagious. I only reminded you of what was already in you. They sat in silence for a while, watching Harold rest. His breathing had evened out, his face calm. Every so often, he murmured small fragments of sound, half words, half memories. It was like listening to someone dream their way back into the world. That evening, the sky cleared after days of rain. Through the tall window, the light of sunset spilled into the room, painting everything gold. Maya adjusted the curtains and smiled. "It is a beautiful evening," she said. "Almost like the world is celebrating with us." Evan chuckled softly. "If it starts playing music next, I might start believing in miracles." Maya smiled at the floor, hiding her laughter. "Maybe miracles are just people who keep trying when everyone else stops." He looked at her then, his expression warm. "You really believe that, don't you?" She nodded. "I do, and I think your father believes it now too." Evan stood and moved to the bedside again. He took his father's hand gently, as if it were something fragile and precious. "Dad," he said softly, "you are doing great. We are all here. You are safe." Maya watched quietly, her chest tight with quiet emotion. The bond between them, father and son, was no longer distant or cold. It was fragile but alive, rebuilt one whisper at a time. As night settled over the city, Maya began her familiar ritual. She dimmed the lights, drew her chair close, and started to hum the lullaby. Her voice filled the room with the same soft melody that had carried them through all those nights of silence. Evan listened beside her, his hand still holding his father's. The sound seemed to wrap around all three of them, gentle and unbroken. Halfway through the song, Harold's lips moved again. The word was faint, but both of them heard it. "Sing," he whispered. Maya's breath hitched. She nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. "I will," she said softly. "I will keep singing." The monitor beeped steadily, the rhythm strong and sure. Outside, the rain began again, but softly this time, as if in harmony with her voice. And for the first time in a long while, the room that had once been filled with silence now felt alive with sound, with warmth, and with the undeniable pulse of hope returning. Morning sunlight poured through the tall windows of West Hill Nursing Home, flooding room 407 in a gentle gold glow. The world seemed to hold its breath in that room, where a miracle had quietly begun. Harold Thompson, once unresponsive for months, was now slowly finding his way back to the surface of life. His eyes still fluttered between sleep and awareness, but his heartbeat was steady, his breath stronger. Maya Bennett arrived early, as she always did. Her steps were lighter now, and even the long hallway leading to the private suite felt less like a place of sorrow and more like a sanctuary of healing. When she entered the room, she was met by the sound of soft conversation. Evan Thompson was already there, speaking gently to his father. "Good morning," Maya said, smiling as she set her bag down. Evan turned toward her, a warmth in his expression that had not been there before. "He is awake more often now," he said a few words earlier. Maya's eyes brightened. "That is incredible. What did he say?" Evan chuckled softly. "He asked for coffee. Dr. Harris said that might have to wait." "Oh?" Maya smiled, glancing at Harold. "That sounds like a man who remembers the little things." Harold's eyelids lifted slightly. His gaze, though hazy, shifted toward Maya. His lips moved, and his voice came out hoarse but recognizable. "The nurse who sings." Maya's breath caught. She stepped closer and took his hand carefully. "Yes, Mr. Thompson, it is me." He smiled faintly, a ghost of the powerful businessman he once was. "You never stopped." Her eyes welled with tears. "No, sir. We never stopped believing in you." The doctors came in soon after, checking his vitals, adjusting medication, recording data. The mood was different now. The room no longer felt like a ward. It felt alive, hopeful. Even the nurses passing by smiled when they looked through the glass panel in the door. By late afternoon, Evan and Maya sat together near the window while Harold rested. The sound of birds filtered through the open gap in the curtain, and the hum of machines faded into the background. For a rare moment, the world outside seemed to match the peace inside. Evan broke the silence first. "You know," he said, "when I was little, my mother used to bring me here sometimes. This exact floor, Before it was renovated, she volunteered with the elderly. She said it reminded her to stay kind, no matter how much money we had. Maja listened quietly. She sounds like someone who understood people deeply. He nodded. She did. My father loved her, but he did not know how to show it. After she passed, he buried himself in work. I guess I did too. You both built walls to survive, Maya said softly. But sometimes, survival and living are not the same thing. Evan looked at her then, studying her expression, her calm steadiness. You sound like you have lived that truth. Maya hesitated before speaking. When my mother was sick, we could not afford much care. I was still in nursing school. I stayed with her every night, talking to her, singing to her even when the doctors said she could not hear me. The night before she passed, she opened her eyes for the first time in weeks and said, "You kept me alive longer than medicine ever could." Evan's voice softened. "That is why you do this." She nodded. "Every patient I care for is someone's parent, someone's whole world. I just try to be what I once needed." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Evan said quietly, "My father needed someone like you." Maya looked at him, her tone gentle. "He still does. But now, he has you too." Evan's expression shifted, grateful, but also reflective, as if seeing the path ahead for the first time. That evening, Harold woke again, his eyes clearer than before. He recognized his son immediately and reached out a trembling hand. Evan clasped it quickly, his throat tight. "Dad," he said softly, "we have been waiting for you." Harold's voice was rough, fragile. "How long?" "6 months," Evan said. "But you are home now." The old man's eyes moved toward Maya, and for the first time, he smiled with a kind of peace that filled the room. She brought the light back. Maya's eyes glistened. "You did the hard part, sir. We just reminded you where to find the way." Dr. Harris entered quietly, observing from the corner. "Mr. Thompson," he said, "you are recovering faster than expected. With continued therapy, you might regain full speech and mobility within weeks." Harold nodded faintly, then whispered, "Then let us not waste time." The doctor smiled. "That sounds like the Harold Thompson everyone remembers." When night came, Evan stayed by his father's side while Maya finished her charting. She looked out through the window at the city lights glowing far below. The same world she had walked through every day now felt somehow softer, more forgiving. Before she left for the night, Harold stirred again. "Miss Bennett," he said weakly. She turned quickly. "Yes, sir?" He looked at her, his voice faint but clear. "Thank you for not giving up." Maya swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "You gave me a reason not to." When she stepped into the hallway, Evan followed her out. "You changed him," he said. She shook her head. "He changed himself. I just sang until he could hear again." Evan smiled, quiet and sincere. "Either way, you changed us both." Maya looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Then keep that change, Mr. Thompson. The world needs more of it." He watched her walk down the corridor, her footsteps fading into the hum of the night. Inside the room, Harold slept peacefully, the soft beeping of the monitor steady and calm. And for the first time in years, the Thompson family story no longer felt like one of loss, but of beginning again. The following week arrived with clear skies and the scent of early spring drifting through the open windows of West Hill Nursing Home. The world outside seemed to mirror the quiet renewal that had taken hold in room 407. Each day, Harold Thompson stayed awake longer, spoke a few more words, and remembered a few more things. His recovery was steady, almost miraculous, and everyone from doctors to janitors felt its warmth ripple through the halls. Maya Bennett continued her routine with quiet joy. She had seen patients improve before, but never like this. There was something sacred in watching a man rediscover his life, one whisper, one breath, one heartbeat at a time. That morning, she entered the room, carrying a small tray of warm tea and a folded newspaper. Harold was sitting up now, supported by pillows, his eyes alert, though still shadowed by fatigue. Evan sat beside him, reading aloud from a business report, his tone light and patient. "Good morning," Maya said softly as she approached. Harold looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Miss Bennett. You are punctual as always." She smiled back. "You are sounding stronger today." He chuckled, his voice still gravelly but full of humor. "It seems I have no choice. My son and my nurse refuse to let me rest in peace." Evan laughed under his breath. We will rest when you start walking again. Maya placed the tray on the side table and poured tea into a small porcelain cup. We will start with physical therapy today, Mr. Thompson. Only simple exercises for now. Simple? He said with a smirk. You make it sound like I am learning to live again. She met his gaze with warmth. Maybe that is exactly what you are doing. As Harold practiced small hand and arm movements, Maya guided him patiently. Evan stayed quiet, watching the two of them with growing admiration. There was something deeply human about their interaction, the gentle firmness in Maya's tone, the humility in his father's attempts. For the first time, Evan realized how little kindness he had allowed himself to witness in his adult life. After the session, Harold rested, and Maya stepped into the hallway to update the medical chart. Evan followed her out, his voice low. He looks better every day. You have done more than any doctor could. She smiled modestly. Healing is never just medicine, Mr. Thompson. It is connection. People fight harder when they feel seen. Evan leaned against the wall, his hands in his pockets. That is not something they teach in medical school. No, she replied. But it is something life teaches, if we pay attention. There was a pause, comfortable and quiet. Then Evan said, My father wants to host a small press briefing soon. The board is insisting on public proof of his recovery. He asked if you would stand with him when he makes his first appearance. Maya blinked in surprise. Me? Why? Because he wants people to know who helped him remember what living feels like, Evan said simply. She hesitated, unsure. I'm not used to attention. Neither was he, Evan said with a small smile. But maybe that is the point. Later that day, Maya returned to the ward and found Nurse Clara waiting near the nurse's station. Clara's usual smirk was replaced by something harder to read, part curiosity, part envy. So it is true, Clara said. The great Harold Thompson is awake, and you are his favorite nurse. Quite the story, isn't it? Maya set her folder down calmly. It is not a story, Clara. It is his life. Clara's voice lowered. Be careful, Maya. People like him, they do not always stay grateful. The higher they rise, the faster they forget who helped them. Maya met her eyes steadily. Maybe. But I do not do this for gratitude. I do it because it is right. Clara gave a short laugh. You and your morals. Just remember, hospitals love a hero until they need a scapegoat. Then she walked away, leaving her words hanging like smoke in the air. Maya shook off the unease and returned to room 407. The rest of the day passed peacefully. She adjusted medications, helped Harold eat, and wrote careful notes on his progress. By evening, when the sun cast long amber streaks across the floor, she felt the rare satisfaction that comes only from meaningful work. As she prepared to leave, Harold called her name. Miss Bennett, he said quietly. She turned. Yes, sir? He gestured toward the chair beside him. Sit for a moment, if you have time. She sat, folding her hands in her lap. Harold looked at her for a long moment before speaking. I do not remember much from the months I was unconscious, but I remember a voice. Soft, steady, kind. It pulled me back when I thought I was gone. Was that you? Her throat tightened. Yes, sir. I sang to you every night. He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. Then I owe you more than my life. I owe you my soul. Maya shook her head gently. You do not owe me anything. You fought your way back because you wanted to live. He smiled faintly. You sound like my late wife. She used to tell me the same thing. Evan, standing by the window, turned at the mention of his mother. His voice softened. She would be proud of you, Dad. Harold looked at both of them, his eyes heavy with emotion. Maybe she sent you, Miss Bennett, to remind me what matters. Maya's voice was steady, though her heart was full. Sometimes love finds its way through strangers, sir. That is all I tried to be a reminder. The room fell into a peaceful silence. The machines hummed quietly, the air thick with gratitude and grace. That night, when Maya finally walked out of the hospital, the stars were beginning to appear over the city. She stood for a moment under the cool night sky, feeling the wind on her face. For the first time in years, she did not feel small or tired. She felt alive, part of something larger than herself, something made of kindness, courage, and quiet miracles. The next morning dawned bright and cool, with sunlight spilling across the polished floors of West Hill Nursing Home. The scent of disinfectant mixed with the faint sweetness of flowers from the courtyard, where patients were slowly beginning to enjoy the first warm days of spring. Inside room 407, the atmosphere was still, but not silent. There was a quiet sense of expectation, like the calm before something important. Maya Bennett stood by the window, updating her notes in her small, leather-bound notebook. Harold Thompson had made steady progress. He could now sit upright without support and hold short conversations without exhaustion. Every word he spoke was a small miracle that reminded her why she loved her work. Evan Thompson entered the room carrying a folder. He looked more rested than usual, though the familiar weight of responsibility still lingered in his expression. "Morning, Maya," he said, setting the folder down on the table. "Good morning," she replied, smiling. "Your father's oxygen level is steady. I think he will be ready for another round of physical therapy this afternoon." "That is good news," Evan said. "He has been asking about walking again." Maya turned toward Harold, who was sitting in his bed with a blanket over his legs, a newspaper open in front of him. "We will get there, Mr. Thompson," she said warmly. "One step at a time." "Law." Harold looked up and smiled. "After months of lying still, I am ready to remember what the floor feels like beneath my feet." Evan chuckled. "I told him to wait for the doctor's clearance, but he says patience was never part of his vocabulary." Maya smiled and replied, "It is a good problem to have, wanting life too much." For a moment the room filled with gentle laughter, the kind that did not need to be loud to feel whole. But outside the glass window, beyond that bubble of warmth, something else was stirring. Down the hallway, Nurse Clara was speaking quietly to a man in a tailored gray suit, Nathan Cole, Harold's cousin and the acting chairman of Thompson Financial. His expression was sharp, his smile polite but cold. "So it is true," Nathan said, adjusting his cufflinks. "The old man is finally waking up." Clara nodded, her voice low. "He is speaking again. They say he wants to resume control of the company soon." Nathan's eyes narrowed. "That would be inconvenient." Clara hesitated. "What should I do?" Nathan gave a thin smile. "Just keep me informed. And make sure our friend, Dr. Mason, gets a full report. I need to know everything about this nurse, Maya Bennett." Meanwhile, inside room 407, Maya continued recording Harold's progress. She had noticed that each day he regained more memory names, dates, even snippets of his business affairs. Sometimes he spoke about the company, his tone turning serious. "I trusted Nathan to handle things while I was gone," Harold said one afternoon. "But something feels wrong. There were transactions I never approved, decisions I never signed." Evan frowned. "I've been reviewing some files too. There are inconsistencies, contracts with unusual clauses, missing authorizations." Maya glanced between them, her heart tightening. "Do you think someone was taking advantage of your condition?" Harold's voice grew firm despite his weakness. "I do not think. I know, but I need proof before I confront anyone." The conversation left a quiet heaviness in the room. Maya went about her duties, but her mind stayed alert. She noticed small things, a new face in the hallway, unfamiliar men in suits speaking to administrators, whispers that stopped when she walked by. That evening, as she left the hospital, she saw a black car parked across the street. A man inside lowered his phone when he saw her. Their eyes met for a moment before she turned away quickly. A chill ran down her spine. When she arrived home, she checked her mailbox and found an unmarked envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one line typed neatly across it. "Stop asking questions about the company. Some things are better left in silence." Her hands trembled slightly. She folded the paper and slipped it into her drawer without telling anyone. She did not want to alarm Evan or Harold when hope was finally blooming again. The next day, Harold's strength improved further. During his morning session, he managed to take 3 slow, unsteady steps with the help of a walker. The nurses clapped quietly, and even Dr. Harris smiled in disbelief. "You see," Harold said, breathing hard but grinning. "I am not done yet." Maya beamed. "You are proof that persistence works, Mr. Thompson." Evan's voice was full of pride. "And you just proved that miracles happen to those who do not give up." Harold looked at his son with affection. Miracles happen when good people refuse to walk away. His gaze shifted to Maya. And sometimes they come disguised as nurses with lullabies. Maya felt her face flush, but she smiled. I just kept the room warm until life found its way back. That evening, Evan walked her to the parking lot, as he often did now. The air was cool, and the sound of crickets filled the space between their footsteps. Are you sure you are getting home safe? He asked. I noticed you have been a bit distracted lately. I am fine, she said quickly. Just tired. Long shifts. He looked unconvinced, but nodded. All right. But if anything feels wrong, call me, no matter the hour. She gave a small smile. Thank you, Evan. When she reached her car, she glanced back at the building. Through the window of room 407, she could see the faint outline of Harold's lamp still glowing. It was a symbol now of hope, of healing, and perhaps of something greater that was just beginning to reveal itself. Maya did not know yet that outside the glow of that light, shadows were gathering. Someone was watching, someone who had no intention of letting the truth stay buried. The morning after Harold Thompson took his first steps, the mood in West Hill Nursing Home felt brighter than ever. Nurses greeted each other with genuine smiles, and even the patients in the nearby rooms seemed to sense that something good had happened. But beneath that surface of optimism, Maya Bennett carried a quiet unease. She had slept little the night before. The anonymous note warning her to stop asking questions about the Thompson Company replayed in her mind over and over. She had told herself not to worry, that it was probably a prank or a misunderstanding, but something deep inside whispered otherwise. Still, she arrived early, ready for another day of work. When she entered room 407, Harold was awake and sitting by the window, dressed in a clean hospital gown. The morning light touched his face, revealing more color than before. Evan sat nearby, scrolling through his tablet, his brow furrowed. Good morning, Maya said softly. How are we feeling today? Harold smiled faintly. Better every day, thanks to you. Though I suspect your optimism is stronger than any medicine. Maya chuckled. Optimism and patience, sir. That combination works wonders. Evan looked up from his screen. We have a small issue, he said carefully. The board meeting scheduled for next week. My uncle Nathan plans to present financial reports before my father can attend in person. Some of the documents he is preparing do not align with my records. Harold's expression darkened. That man is rewriting history while I am still alive. Maya hesitated before speaking. Is there anything I can do to help? Evan met her eyes. Actually, yes. You spend more time here than anyone else. If you notice anyone trying to access his medical files or speak to staff about our family, let me know immediately. There may be people watching. Maya nodded firmly. You can count on me. The day passed in a steady rhythm of care and quiet vigilance. Maya guided Harold through another round of physical therapy, helped him eat lunch, and made sure his medication schedule stayed precise. She smiled often, but her thoughts were never far from the warning she had received. Later that afternoon, as she walked past the nurse's station, she overheard Clara's voice in a low tone. Yes, I am sure, Clara was saying into her phone. She is here almost every day. The Thompsons trust her completely. If you need anything, talk to Dr. Mason. He has access to all files. Maya stopped, just out of sight, her heart pounding. The name Mason struck her instantly, Nathan's advisor, the one who had questioned her methods weeks earlier. She waited until Clara hung up before stepping forward, pretending she had just arrived. Clara, Maya said evenly, I think you forgot to record Mr. Thompson's blood pressure from yesterday. Clara startled, her hand gripping the clipboard. Oh, yes, I will update it later. Good, Maya said, her voice calm but her eyes sharp. Let us keep everything accurate. Mr. Thompson deserves that. She walked away, but her pulse raced. She now knew the warning was real. Someone inside the hospital was feeding information to Nathan Cole, and Clara was involved. That evening, Maya stayed late, pretending to organize patient charts while secretly reviewing Harold's medical file. She wanted to ensure no one had tampered with it. As she turned the pages, she noticed something odd. One of the medication logs showed a different signature for a night dose last month. It was not hers, not Dr. Harris's, and not anyone she recognized. Her stomach sank. The date matched the week before Harold's first signs of recovery. The medication listed was a sedative, not one prescribed in his current treatment plan. Someone had deliberately given it to him. She quickly copied the details into her notebook, then tucked the file back exactly as she had found it. Her mind raced as she left the ward, her shoes echoing softly against the polished floor. Outside, the parking lot was nearly empty. The evening sky was painted in deep orange and purple, the kind of beauty she might have admired on another day. But tonight the shadows felt longer. As she reached her car, she noticed a figure standing near the edge of the lot, half hidden beneath a tree. It was too dark to see clearly, but the silhouette was unmistakably watching her. She froze, pretending to search for her keys while glancing over her shoulder. The figure did not move. Her heart thudded in her chest. She quickly got into her car, locked the doors, and drove away. Only after she turned the corner did she glance in the rearview mirror. The figure was gone. At home, she sat at her small kitchen table, her hands trembling slightly as she opened her notebook. The evidence she had copied was not much, but it was enough to raise suspicion. If Nathan had authorized unapproved drugs to keep Harold unconscious, it would explain everything: the delayed recovery, the missing files, the fear in Clara's eyes. Her phone buzzed. A message from Evan appeared on the screen. "Thank you for staying late today. Dad's numbers look good. See you tomorrow." Maya hesitated, then replied, "Of course. There is something I need to tell you soon. It might be important." Oh, she did not want to say more over text. If someone was watching her at the hospital, they could be monitoring her phone too. That night, she placed her notebook in a drawer, locked it, and whispered to herself, "Tomorrow. I will tell him everything tomorrow." But as she turned off the light, she could not shake the feeling that someone, somewhere, already knew she was getting too close to the truth, and that tomorrow might not be as simple as she hoped. The following morning, the sun rose pale and uncertain behind a veil of clouds, as if the sky itself could sense that something was shifting. The calm that had filled West Hill Nursing Home in recent weeks began to crack. The moment Maya Bennett walked through the sliding glass doors, she felt the tension that hummed quietly beneath the polished floors and cheerful greetings. Something was wrong. As she signed in at the nurse's station, Mrs. Carter, the head nurse, gave her a tight smile. "Good morning, Maya," she said quickly, avoiding her eyes. "Dr. Mason will be conducting a routine medication audit today. Make sure your documentation for Mr. Thompson is complete." Maya paused, her pen hovering over the sheet. "A routine audit?" she repeated. "Why now?" Mrs. Carter hesitated, then said in a low voice, "Orders from the board. You know how it works. Everything looks fine until someone powerful decides to ask questions." Maya nodded politely, though her heart began to race. She had a feeling she knew who was behind this. Nathan Cole had moved faster than she expected. When she entered room 407, the tension melted away for a moment. Harold Thompson was sitting up, his complexion stronger, his eyes clearer than ever. Evan stood nearby, reading aloud a letter from one of the foundation's investors. The father and son looked peaceful together finally, after so many months of silence. Maya smiled as she approached. "Good morning, gentlemen." Harold looked up with warmth. "Good morning, Miss Bennett. You are a sight better than the hospital breakfast." Evan chuckled. "We might have to add you to the official Thompson recovery plan." "I will consider it," she replied lightly. But beneath the humor, she could not ignore the unease pressing on her chest. As she checked Harold's vitals, Evan noticed her distracted expression. "Something on your mind?" he asked. Maya hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "Just a few changes happening around the hospital." "Administrative reviews." Evan frowned. "Is this about my father's file?" She met his gaze. "Possibly. I think someone has been tampering with his medical records, and I believe your uncle knows about it." Evan's jaw tightened. "You are certain?" "I found a falsified signature on a medication log from last month, a sedative that was never prescribed. If it was administered, it might explain why your father's recovery took so long." "Oh." For a long moment, Evan said nothing. Then he took a slow breath and said, "We will handle this carefully. Do not say anything to anyone else yet. Let me talk to my father first." Before Maya could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Dr. Mason stepped inside, clipboard in hand, his expression polite but cold. "Good morning," he said smoothly. "Just performing an audit. Nothing personal, Miss Bennett. Routine procedure. Maya's fingers tightened around her pen. Of course, doctor. He moved to the chart at the foot of the bed, flipping through pages, scanning signatures. Mr. Thompson's recovery has been remarkable, he said. Almost too remarkable. Evan crossed his arms. You sound disappointed, doctor. Mason smiled faintly. Just cautious. Rapid recoveries can be unpredictable. We must ensure that no unconventional treatments were involved. Maya spoke evenly. Every step of his care has been documented properly. You are welcome to review any file. Mason nodded, but his eyes stayed on her longer than necessary. I intend to. After he left, Harold exhaled heavily. That man never liked me, he muttered. Evan replied quietly. He is not here for you, Dad. He is here for Nathan. Later that afternoon, Maya walked down to the staff lounge to get a cup of coffee. The room was nearly empty, except for Clara, who sat at the corner table scrolling through her phone. Maya poured her drink and said calmly, You have been busy lately. Clara looked up, feigning innocence. What do you mean? I mean, Maya said, keeping her tone even, that you have been sharing information with people outside this hospital. I heard you speaking to Dr. Mason. He works for Nathan Cole, doesn't he? Clara's eyes narrowed. You should be careful with accusations like that, Maya. You have a lot more to lose than I do. Maya set her cup down, meeting her gaze steadily. I do not care about losing a job. I care about truth. Someone tried to keep Mr. Thompson from waking up. If you were part of that, you should think about what that means. Clara's smirk faltered. For a moment, something like guilt flashed in her expression before she looked away. You do not understand how this place works. People like us do not challenge the people who pay the bills. Maya's voice softened. Then maybe that is the problem. Before Clara could answer, the intercom buzzed with Dr. Harris's voice. Miss Bennett, please report to room 407 immediately. Maya's heart jumped. She ran down the hallway, her shoes clicking against the floor. When she entered the room, Harold was slumped slightly forward, breathing unevenly. Evan stood beside him, panic flashing in his eyes. What happened? Maya asked quickly, checking the monitors. He was talking and then he just lost focus, Evan said. He said he felt dizzy. Maya examined the IV line. The drip rate was faster than it should have been. She adjusted it immediately, then checked the bag. Her eyes widened. It was not the medication she had prepared that morning. Someone switched this, she whispered. This is not his prescription. Evan's voice sharpened. Are you saying someone tried to hurt him? Maya looked at him, her face pale but steady. Yes, and I think we both know who. As Dr. Harris entered to assist, Evan's expression hardened. I am done being careful, he said under his breath. If Nathan wanted a war, he just got one. Outside the window, the clouds gathered again, gray and heavy, as if the storm that had been waiting finally knew where to fall. Night settled over West Hill Nursing Home like a heavy curtain, the sky dark and restless with distant thunder. The quiet rhythm that usually marked the halls was gone, replaced by tension that pulsed through the building like a low heartbeat. After the near incident with Harold Thompson's 4-line, the entire staff moved carefully, whispering in corners, glancing over shoulders. But for Maya Bennett, there was no more room for fear. The truth had found her, and now she had to protect it. Inside room 407, Harold lay asleep, breathing evenly. His vitals had stabilized after the medication switch was discovered, though his skin still looked pale under the soft light. Evan Thompson stood near the window, his phone in one hand, his jaw tight. He had been making calls for the last hour to lawyers, to trusted board members, to anyone who might help uncover what his Uncle Nathan had done. When Maya entered, he looked up immediately. His voice was low but steady. He is out of danger for now. Dr. Harris said you caught it in time. Maya nodded, moving to check the monitors. The sedative would have slowed his heart if it had continued. Whoever replaced that IV knew exactly what they were doing. Evan ran a hand through his hair. This is no longer just about control of the company. This is attempted harm. She looked at him, her voice firm. Then, we need evidence before he tries again. Evan's eyes met hers, the weight of responsibility clear in his expression. You already have it, do not you? The false medication record. Maya nodded slowly. Yes, but it is not enough on its own. The hospital will not move against someone as powerful as Nathan Cole without undeniable proof. We need to show the connection between him, Dr. Mason, and the forged documents. Evan took a breath. Then we gather it, whatever it takes. For the next few hours, they worked quietly. While Harold rested, Maya logged every irregularity she had found. Unauthorized drug entries, access timestamps that did not match her shifts, and the missing audit pages. Evan used his father's credentials to access company records from his tablet, uncovering financial transfers that linked Nathan's foundation account to a private medical consulting firm, Dr. Mason's firm. By midnight, a picture had begun to form. Nathan had been funding Mason privately, using his position on the board to maintain control of Harold's assets while ensuring his incapacitation continued. The sedatives had not been meant to kill but to keep Harold dependent, unable to return to leadership. When Maya looked up from her notes, her eyes met Evan's. He has been orchestrating this for months. Evan's voice was quiet but full of anger. He underestimated us. He thought my father would never wake up. At that moment, Harold stirred in his bed. His eyes fluttered open, hazy but aware. "Evan?" he murmured. Evan moved closer instantly. "I am here, Dad. You are safe." "Oh." Harold's gaze shifted to Maya, then back to his son. "I heard you both talking," he said weakly. "You found proof." Evan hesitated before answering. "Enough to start, but I need your permission to act." Harold's voice, though frail, carried the unmistakable authority of the man he once was. "Then act, before he buries this deeper." Maya adjusted the blanket gently. "You should rest, Mr. Thompson. Tomorrow will be difficult." He gave her a faint smile. It always is, when truth finally arrives. By morning, the storm had broken outside, rain slashing across the wide glass panes of the building. Evan had arranged a private meeting with the hospital administrator and the board's legal representative. Maya would attend as a witness, carrying her notes and the copied evidence from Harold's file. Before the meeting, she stopped by the room to check on Harold one last time. His color had improved slightly, though his voice was still weak. "Be careful," he said softly. "Nathan does not play fair." "I will," Maya replied. "I promise." In the conference room, the atmosphere was sharp with tension. Nathan Cole sat at the far end of the table, immaculate as ever in a tailored charcoal suit. His expression was calm, but his eyes flickered briefly when Maya and Evan walked in. Dr. Mason sat beside him, his face unreadable. "Evan," Nathan said with practiced ease, "what is all this urgency? You should be focused on your father's recovery, not on company politics." Evan took a seat opposite him. "This is not politics, Uncle Nathan. This is accountability." He gestured for Maya to hand over her folder. She slid it across the table. Inside were copies of the forged medication logs, timestamps, and payment records linking Nathan's private account to Dr. Mason's firm. Nathan opened the folder, glanced through the papers, and gave a quiet laugh. "This is absurd. Anyone could have fabricated these. Do you really expect the board to believe that I, your own family, would harm my brother?" Maya spoke calmly, but clearly. The timestamps matched the hours Dr. Mason accessed the restricted database. The medication switch happened during a shift when Nurse Clara signed in under his authorization. "It is not coincidence, Mr. Cole." Dr. Mason's jaw tightened. "You are making dangerous accusations, Miss Bennett." "Oh." Evan leaned forward, his voice like steel. "Dangerous truths are still truths." For a moment, silence filled the room except for the rain hammering against the windows. Then the hospital administrator cleared his throat. "We will need to verify these findings immediately. Until then, Mr. Cole, your board access and hospital privileges are temporarily suspended." Nathan's mask cracked for the first time. "You cannot do this," the administrator interrupted. "We just did." Evan stood slowly. "You are finished, Uncle. And when the police see those transfer records, this will not stop at suspension." Nathan's glare shifted between them, but he said nothing more. He rose abruptly and left the room, his footsteps echoing down the hall. When the door closed, Maya exhaled the breath she had been holding. Evan looked at her and said quietly, "You just saved my father again." She smiled softly. "No, Evan, he saved himself. We only made sure the truth had a voice." Outside, the storm began to ease. The first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, scattering across the wet pavement like a promise that after darkness, light always finds a way back. The morning after the confrontation, West Hill Nursing Home was quieter than usual. Rainwater still clung to the glass windows, and the air smelled clean, as if the storm had washed away more than just the dust. But for Maya Bennett, the calm felt deceptive, too still, too heavy. She arrived at work early, her heart steady but alert. Since the meeting, Nathan Cole had disappeared from the hospital, escorted out after his privileges were suspended. Dr. Mason had not been seen since the night before. The board had launched a full internal investigation, and every staff member knew that the case involving Harold Thompson's care was no longer a secret. As Maya approached room 407, she paused by the door. Inside, Harold was awake, reading through a folder of documents that Evan had brought him. His posture was stronger, his voice surer. He looked more like the man described in the newspaper articles, the decisive leader, the visionary who built Thompson Financial from the ground up. When Maya stepped inside, both men looked up. "Good morning," she said gently. "How are you feeling today?" Harold smiled faintly. "Alive." Which is saying something, considering recent events. "Oh," Evan gave a short laugh. "Dr. Harris says he will be able to move to a rehabilitation suite within a week. That is a sentence I never thought I would hear." "That is remarkable," Maya said, warmth spreading through her tone. "You have both come a long way." Harold nodded slowly. "I have you to thank for that, Miss Bennett. You stood up for what was right, even when it could have cost you your career." She shook her head modestly. "You do not need to thank me, sir. I only did what was necessary." Harold's eyes softened. "You did more than that. You believed in me, when even my own family had given up." Evan's voice was quiet but full of meaning. "You taught us what faith really looks like, Maya, and it is not blind. It is the kind that keeps showing up, even when no one's watching." Maya looked down for a moment, her throat tightening. "Sometimes showing up is all we can do. The rest belongs to grace." "Daughter." The room fell silent for a few seconds, filled only by the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor and the soft hum of the rain outside. A knock sounded at the door. Mrs. Carter entered, carrying a sealed envelope. "Mr. Thompson," she said carefully. "This just arrived by courier. It was addressed directly to you." Harold took the envelope and opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper typed, unsigned, but unmistakably personal. As he read, his brow furrowed. Evan leaned closer. "What is it?" Harold handed him the page. The message was simple. "You may have won the board, but not the war. Some secrets do not stay buried, Harold. Watch who you trust." Evan's expression hardened. "Nathan?" Maya frowned. "You think he is still trying to intimidate you?" Harold folded the letter carefully. "Men like him do not surrender easily, but he has already lost what matters most: credibility. The truth is stronger than fear." Evan nodded slowly. "Still, we should be cautious." Oh, later that afternoon, Harold's physical therapy session began. Maya helped him from the bed to the walker. His movements were slow but deliberate. With each step, he seemed to reclaim more of himself. Nurses and patients passing by paused to watch, some clapping quietly as he reached the far end of the hallway. When they returned to the room, Harold sank into the chair with a satisfied sigh. "I forgot how much I miss standing on my own," he said. Maya smiled. "It is not just standing, Mr. Thompson. It is rising." Evan met her gaze, his eyes bright with something unspoken. Admiration, gratitude, maybe something deeper. "You always know how to say things that matter," he said softly. She replied gently, "Maybe because I have seen what it looks like when people forget what matters." For the first time in a long while, laughter filled the room again, light, real, unguarded. As evening approached, Evan received a phone call from the family attorney, confirming that legal proceedings against Nathan Cole and Dr. Mason were underway. Evidence had been handed over to authorities, and both men would face charges for fraud, malpractice, and obstruction of care. Evan ended the call and turned to his father. "It is over. The law will handle the rest." Harold nodded, though his gaze turned thoughtful. "Justice is not revenge, Evan. Let the truth speak for itself. That is enough." Maya quietly agreed. Peace never comes from anger, only from closure. Before she left for the night, Harold asked her to stay a moment. "Maya," he said, his tone gentle but serious, "when I leave this hospital, I want to establish a new foundation, one that funds honest, compassionate healthcare workers. I would like you to help lead it." She blinked in surprise. "Me?" "Yes," he said simply. "You understand that medicine without kindness is empty. I want that principle to live on." Her voice softened. "I would be honored, sir." Evan smiled. "Looks like you are stuck with us a little longer." Maya laughed quietly. "I can think of worse fates." As she walked down the corridor later, her reflection moved beside her in the polished glass. For the first time in years, she felt light not because everything was perfect, but because she knew she had done the right thing. Behind her, in room 407, Harold turned to his son. "You know," he said, "that young woman has more courage than most people I have ever met." Evan's voice was quiet but full of certainty. "I know, Dad, and I am not letting her walk out of our lives again." Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The clouds parted, revealing a wide stretch of silver sky. The city lights glimmered below, and for the first time since his illness began, Harold Thompson slept without fear. And somewhere between those quiet walls and the rhythm of the night, hope real, unshakable hope took root again. The morning of the press conference arrived with a kind of hushed anticipation that could be felt all through the city. For weeks, the name Harold Thompson had been whispered across newsrooms, hospital corridors, and business offices. Everyone wanted to see the man who had defied both illness and betrayal, the man who had come back from silence to reclaim his life. At West Hill Rehabilitation Center, the air was calm but charged with energy. Staff members moved briskly, preparing for the cameras that would soon fill the courtyard. Maya Bennett walked through the glass doors, wearing her usual calm expression, but inside her heart was racing. She had been asked to stand beside Harold Thompson at the event, not as a nurse, but as the woman who had helped him find his way back. When she entered Harold's room, he was already dressed in a tailored gray suit, seated in a wheelchair by the window. The morning light washed over his face, highlighting both strength and gentleness. Evan stood behind him, adjusting the microphone that would connect to the podium outside. "Good morning," Maya said softly. Harold turned, his eyes bright. "Good morning, Miss Bennett. Are you ready for this chaos?" She smiled faintly. "I should be asking you that question, sir." "Oh," Evan chuckled quietly. "He has been practicing his speech since 5 o'clock this morning." Harold gave a mock scowl. "I was rehearsing gratitude, son. It is a skill I seem to need more of these days." Maya knelt beside him, checking his pulse and the small monitor attached to his wrist. "Everything looks perfect. Just remember to breathe slowly when you speak. The crowd can wait for you." He nodded, his tone softening. "You always remind me to slow down. I suppose that is why I am still here." As the time for the conference drew closer, the courtyard outside began to fill with reporters, photographers, and representatives from the Thompson Foundation. The hum of conversation grew louder, and the sound of camera shutters echoed in the air. Evan pushed his father's wheelchair toward the stage, while Maya walked beside them. When they stepped into the sunlight, a hush rippled through the crowd. For a moment, everyone simply stared the once powerful CEO, now frail but proud, flanked by the son who had once distanced himself and the caregiver who had brought them both back together. The scene was cinematic in its quiet symmetry. Harold was helped to his feet at the podium. He leaned slightly on the stand, his voice steady when he began to speak. "Good morning," he said. "6 months ago, I was told that my time as a leader and perhaps as a man was over. I could not speak, I could not move, and worst of all, I could not see the faces of those I loved." He paused, glancing at Maya and Evan before continuing. "But fate, it seems, has a way of humbling and healing us in equal measure. I stand before you today not as a man who triumphed through wealth or influence, but as a man who was saved by compassion. A nurse sang to me when I could not respond, and her kindness reached where medicine could not." The audience listened in complete silence. Maya felt tears sting her eyes but kept them from falling. "I have learned," Harold continued, "that leadership is not about control, it is about care. And so, from this day forward, the Thompson Foundation will dedicate a portion of its annual profits to the creation of the Bennett Initiative, an organization devoted to supporting caregivers, nurses, and medical workers who remind us what healing truly means." The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, but Harold's gaze remained on Maya. "Miss Bennett," he said gently, Would you please join me here? Maya froze for a second, then stepped forward. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached the podium. Harold took her hand and raised it for the cameras. This woman, he said, taught me that kindness has power. She gave me back my voice, and through it, she gave me back my son. Evan stepped closer, his eyes meeting Maya's. In that instant, under the open sky and the clicking of cameras, there was a wordless understanding between them, something beyond gratitude. After the speech, as the press conference ended and the reporters dispersed, Harold was escorted back inside. The energy outside began to settle, but Maya remained for a moment by the stage, watching the crowd dissolve into the afternoon sunlight. Evan joined her, his voice quiet. You handled that beautifully. He meant every word. Maya turned to him. He has more strength than anyone gives him credit for. Evan smiled faintly. He says the same about you. They stood together in silence for a few seconds, watching the wind play with the banners that bore the foundation's name. Then Evan said, There is something I have been meaning to tell you. Maya tilted her head. What is it? He hesitated, searching for the right words. When I first saw you singing to him, I thought you were wasting your time. I did not believe kindness could change anything. But you proved me wrong. You changed everything for him, for me. Maya's voice softened. It was never just me, Evan. Healing takes more than one heart. He smiled. Maybe, but it started with yours. For the first time, Maya allowed herself to hold his gaze a moment longer than before. The tension that had once existed between them was gone, replaced by something steady and warm, something that did not need to be spoken yet. Inside the building, Harold watched from the window, a faint smile crossing his lips. He had built an empire once, but now he saw the beginnings of something more lasting, a legacy of compassion. As the sun dipped lower, painting the courtyard in shades of gold, Maya turned toward Evan and said quietly, Whatever comes next, promise me we keep this honest. The world needs more truth like today. Evan nodded. I promise. Oh. And under that fading light, with the echoes of applause still lingering in the air, they both knew that the real healing had only just begun. The day after the press conference, sunlight streamed through the windows of West Hill Rehabilitation Center, warm and golden, carrying a sense of peace that had long been absent. The world outside had already begun to react to Harold Thompson's powerful speech. News outlets praised his humility, his transformation, and the creation of the Bennett Initiative. Photos of the nurse who had sung to him, the woman whose compassion had rewritten the story of one of the city's most powerful men, circulated across television screens and social media. But inside the hospital, Maya Bennett went about her duties as quietly as ever. She moved through the halls with her clipboard and gentle smile, caring for her patients with the same patience that had defined her long before anyone knew her name. The attention unsettled her. For years, her work had been about listening, not being seen. Now, strangers called her the nurse who healed the millionaire, and she did not know how to feel about that. When she entered room 407, she found Harold sitting by the window again, sipping tea. His recovery had exceeded everyone's expectations. The wheelchair was now only for long distances. Most days, he insisted on walking with a cane instead. Evan was seated across from him, reviewing new proposals for the Bennett Initiative. Good morning, Maya said softly. Both men looked up and smiled. Harold's face lit up. Good morning, Miss Bennett, or should I say, our newest celebrity. She blushed, shaking her head. Please, do not say that, sir. I am not used to all this attention. Oh, Evan chuckled. You might as well accept it. The world has decided you are their symbol of hope. I am just a nurse, she said quietly, and tomorrow there will be another story, another person. Harold lowered his cup and regarded her with warmth. That humility is exactly why the world trusts you, Maya. Fame fades, but character remains. The words touched her more deeply than she expected. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. That means a lot. Evan looked at his father. The foundation's website crashed twice last night. Donations are coming in faster than we can track. Hospitals across the country want to partner with us. Harold smiled. Then it is working. That is all that matters. But as the conversation continued, Maya noticed something subtle in Harold's expression, a quiet weariness. His recovery had been rapid, but even resilience had its limits. After a while, she suggested he rest. Evan helped his father back into bed, pulling the blanket up gently. "You have done enough speeches for one lifetime," he said with a teasing tone. Harold smiled faintly. "Perhaps, but I still have one more promise to keep." "What promise?" Evan asked. Harold's gaze shifted to Maya. "To make sure she never doubts the power of what she did. The world can be cruel to those who lead with kindness. We must protect people like her." Maya's heart tightened at his words. "You do not need to protect me, sir. You already gave me something worth more than safety." "And what is that?" he asked with a small smile. She answered softly, "Belief. You reminded me that good things can come from standing up for what is right, even when it is terrifying." The room fell quiet for a few seconds, filled only by the hum of the machines and the faint sound of rain beginning to fall outside. Later that afternoon, after checking her other patients, Maya returned to find Evan still in the room, typing on his laptop. He looked up when she entered. "My father is asleep," he said quietly. "You can sit for a minute if you like." She hesitated but then took the chair beside him. "Are you working on the foundation?" "Yes," he replied. "But not just that. I am also drafting a statement to the board. I have decided to step back from the company for a while." Maya blinked in surprise. "You are leaving?" "Not leaving," he said. "Just shifting. For years, I thought success meant power, but after everything that happened, I see it differently now. I want to build something that actually helps people." Maya smiled softly. "You sound like your father." Evan laughed quietly. "That might be the best compliment I have ever received." They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the rain grew heavier, tapping against the glass in rhythmic patterns. It was the same kind of evening as the ones they had shared months ago when Maya sang softly under the dim light and Evan stood quietly by the door, just listening. He looked at her now with that same quiet intensity. "You know," he said, "when I first met you, I thought you were just another kind nurse doing her job. But you saw something no one else did. You saw the man my father used to be, and the man he could still become." She turned toward him, her expression gentle. "Maybe because I needed to believe that people can come back from anything. That is what keeps me doing this job." Evan's voice softened. "And do you believe that for yourself too?" Her breath caught. "I think I am learning to." At that moment, Harold stirred slightly, his voice groggy but clear. "You two should stop pretending this is just gratitude," he murmured. Maya flushed, caught off guard. Evan laughed under his breath. "Dad, you are supposed to be resting." "Oh, I have eyes, son," Harold said with a smile. "Do not waste time dancing around what matters. Life is too short for that." Maya tried to deflect the moment with humor. "He really is getting his strength back." "Apparently," Evan said, smiling at her. As the evening deepened, Maya prepared to leave. She adjusted Harold's blanket one last time, her movements slow and careful. "Get some rest, Mr. Thompson," she said softly. "Tomorrow will be another long day." He gave her a knowing look, for all the right reasons. Evan walked her to the door, their steps quiet in the dim hallway. "You are not planning to disappear after all this, are you?" he asked. She turned to face him. "No. I think I am exactly where I am supposed to be." He smiled. "Good, because neither of us is done learning yet." As she walked away, the rain outside eased into a gentle drizzle. Behind her, room 407 glowed softly in the night, a place that had once held silence and sorrow, now filled with the quiet hum of life, gratitude, and the beginning of something neither of them could quite name, but both could feel. Spring slowly gave way to summer, and with it came warmth, color, and a sense of renewal that seemed to touch everything around West Hill Rehabilitation Center. The flowers in the courtyard were in full bloom, and laughter could often be heard from the patients who walked among them. For the first time in a long while, there was no shadow hanging over room 407, only light, peace, and quiet gratitude. 3 months had passed since the press conference that changed everything. Harold Thompson was now fully recovered, walking with only a simple cane and an occasional reminder from his doctors to rest. The Bennett Initiative had already funded programs in several hospitals, providing emotional and therapeutic support for patients who needed care beyond medicine. The world had moved on from scandal and recovery stories, but for the 3 people at the heart of it, life had only just begun again. That morning, Maya Bennett arrived at the Thompson family estate, a wide, sunlit home surrounded by gardens that stretched toward the horizon. It was her first visit since Harold had left the hospital, She carried a folder of updates about the initiative, but her heart was more focused on the reunion than the paperwork. Evan opened the door before she could even knock. "You are early," he said, smiling. "I have been told punctuality is a good habit," she replied lightly. "Old nurses never break routine." He laughed softly. "Come in. My father has been waiting for you." Inside, the house was filled with the soft sounds of life again, music playing from an old record player, sunlight filtering through tall windows, and the faint smell of fresh coffee. Harold sat in the living room, wearing a light gray sweater and reading the morning paper. When he saw her, he stood, smiling broadly. "Maya," he greeted warmly, "you are a sight for sore eyes." "It is good to see you walking again, Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice full of genuine joy. "You look stronger than ever." He chuckled. "I have a persistent nurse and an overprotective son to thank for that." Evan joined them, handing his father a cup of tea. Persistent is the right word. Maya smiled but quickly turned the conversation to business. "I brought the latest reports from the Bennett Initiative. The pilot program at Street Claire's hospital has already helped over 200 families." Harold nodded thoughtfully. "Good. That is exactly what we hoped for. Real impact, not just numbers." Evan added, "The media attention has died down, which is a relief. People finally understand that the story was never about scandal, it was about healing." Maya agreed quietly. "Healing takes time, and sometimes it takes courage to keep believing in it." Harold studied her for a moment. "You have given the world a reason to believe again, Maya. You did that by being who you are, steady, honest, and kind. Never forget that." Her eyes softened. "Thank you, sir, but I think we all helped each other heal." After lunch, the three of them walked outside to the garden. The air was warm, carrying the faint scent of lavender and roses. Harold stopped beside a stone path, lined with blooming hydrangeas. "Do you remember when this garden was overgrown?" he asked. "It took weeks to bring it back to life." Evan smiled. "You said it was hopeless, but we cleared it one step at a time." Harold looked at Maya. "Everything worth saving takes time. People are not so different from gardens." They walked slowly until they reached a small fountain near the edge of the property. A new plaque had been placed there, engraved with simple words. "Kindness is not weakness. It is strength in its purest form." Maya traced the words with her fingers. "This is beautiful," she said softly. "It was Evan's idea," Harold said. "I wanted the world to remember what built all of this, not power, not wealth, but kindness." Evan looked at her then, his voice steady but warm. "My father is right. The world does not need more success stories. It needs reminders that compassion still changes lives." Maya smiled, feeling tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "You both have come a long way." "So have you," Harold said. "And now, it is time you stopped hiding behind your humility. You have built something extraordinary. Let yourself be proud." For a moment she could not find words. The breeze moved gently through the garden, carrying with it the scent of earth and summer air. Later that afternoon, after Harold went inside to rest, Maya and Evan lingered by the fountain. The quiet between them was easy now, no longer filled with unspoken tension but with familiarity and trust. Evan broke the silence first. "He is right, you know. You changed both of us, and I do not want that to end here." Maya turned toward him, her heart steady. "It does not have to end. The work we started, the initiative, still needs us." "I do not mean just the work," he said gently. "I mean everything. I want you to be part of our lives. Not just as a partner in the foundation, but as family." The words hung in the air, simple yet sincere. She looked into his eyes and saw no grandeur, no promise of riches or power, only honesty. She smiled faintly. "You have your father's way with words." He laughed softly. "I will take that as a compliment." "Oh." Her voice was quiet but certain. "Let us take it one step at a time. Healing, even the heart's kind, does not need to rush." Evan nodded, smiling. One step at a time. As they stood together, the sunlight broke through the trees, bathing them in gold. Inside the house, Harold watched from the window, his heart full of peace. He had once believed his legacy was the company he built. Now he understood it was something far greater, a legacy of compassion, courage, and the quiet love that had grown from it. And in that moment, surrounded by blooming gardens and the echo of gentle laughter. The story that began in silence ended not with grand triumph, but with something far more powerful: hope renewed, love restored, and lives forever changed by the simple act of care.